Psalm 2. This psalm warns against trying to outwit the ways of God. It also instructs one who has reason to rejoice to tremble, lest his sins cause his joy to be overturned. Why are the nations in an uproar and people muttering in vain? The kings of the earth will stand up, and rulers conspire together against God and against his anointed. Let us break apart their bands and cast away from us their cords. He who sits in heaven will laugh, God will ridicule them. Then he will speak to them in wrath, and his fury will confound them. And it is I that established my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. I will relate the decree that God spoke to me. You are my son. Today I gave birth to you. Ask of me, and I will bestow nations as your inheritance, and as your possessions the ends of the earth. You will break them with an iron rod. Like a potter's vessel, you'll shatter them. And now, kings, be wise. Be admonished, judges of the earth. Serve God with fear and rejoice with trembling. Worship in purity, lest he become angry, and you are lost in the way, because his anger ignites in an instant. Happy are all who take refuge in him. Hi, everyone. So now we're going to get into the commentary of Psalm 2. We're going to start out with a question that's brought down from the Talmud, and it says, when will God laugh and why, as referenced in verse 2 through 4. And it says that it's recorded that Rabbi Yossi said in the future era, idol worshippers will come and convert to Judaism. But will they be accepted is the question. And has it not been taught in the days of Mashiach? Converts will not be accepted, neither will they accept in the days of David or Shlomo, saying that they were not accepted in those days either. It says actually, they will be self-made converts on their own, and they will choose to place tefillin on their heads and on their arms, tzitzits on their clothes, and mezuzah on the doorpost. But when Gog and Magog will come to battle against God and against his anointed, as stated in verse 2, then each of the converts will cast away his mitzvot and go on his way. And the verse states, let us break apart their bands. And that's a reference to the tefillin and the tzitzit and all that. And it says, and cast away from us their cords. Again, the reference to the tzitzit there. So then God will sit and laugh. And verse states, he who sits in the heaven will laugh. And that's stated by Devorah Esther 3b. So now this second chapter of Psalms is actually connected with the first one. And this is also brought down in the Talmud. It says this chapter is combined with the previous one. They should really be considered as one chapter. Every chapter that was particularly dear to David, he commenced with happy and ended with happy. And he began with happy, as the verse states, happy is the man, 1:1. And he ended with happy, as the verse states, happy are all who take refuge in him. And that's in 2:12, Brachos 9b. So now this verse 7 has a very, I guess in this day and age, a very controversial statement. It says, who is considered a son, quote unquote, son of God, as referenced in verse 7. And it says, Rashi says that God said to David, you are the head over Israel, who are called my firstborn son, as in Shemos 4:22. And the Radak says that on that day, the divine spirit was born within David. The subsequent Tehillim he wrote from that day on were composed with the divine inspiration. And the Zohar says that when David was 13, he wrote this. Why? And it says, because before this, he was not his son. His supernal soul had not settled on him. That's brought down in Zohar 2:98a. So in the Midrash Tehillim, it says about verse 8 that God said, ask of me to three men, to Shlomo, Achaz, and the Mashiach. What did Mashiach ask for? He asked that Israel should live forever and ever. So as the chapter concludes out, very interesting insights. And as in 2:10, verse 10, Rashi says the Jewish prophets are merciful people. They reprove even wicked nations to turn away from their evil, for God extends his hand to the wicked and to the righteous. And as we all know, it's very well stated that Hashem has an open hand to welcome rebels and sinners, that they should all repent and come to a place of tshuva. And I pray that we would all merit to be in that place of tshuva. And lastly, it says, how do you rejoice with trembling? This is a reference to the 11th verse there. The Eben Ezra says that fear God even when you rejoice, and the Zohar says that the verse speaks of Jews in the diaspora. When you are in the Holy Land, then you can serve God with joy. As in Tehillim 100, verse 2, and the Zohar 3, I think it's the 118a. And lastly, the Orchas Tzaddikim says that just as a man loves his wife, but fears to disobey her so that he will not lose her love. And that's going to conclude today's reading.